When it comes to what your family eats and drinks, you know your choices matter. You're the expert because you know what fits your life. And getting it right starts with good information. That's why America's beverage companies are sharing more information about our ingredients at goodtoknowfacts.org. No spin, no judgments, just the facts straight from the experts for more than 140 beverage ingredients. Visit goodtoknowfacts.org.
What is the biggest difference in their mindset of somebody that has the ability but doesn't quite get there?
I think it's pretty obvious to know that the best players in the world are not satisfied with the successes that they've had. They don't win a World Series like, oh, I'm cool now. Like, I'm chilling. But what's not so obvious, and what I actually think is the secret ingredient to high performers, especially in the athletic world and beyond, is that
What's going on, guys? Welcome back. This is Sean French, your founder and host of the podcast, The Determined Society. Guys, today I have with me a very special guest. He's a new friend of mine. His name is Trevor Anderson. He is the owner and founder of Better Every Day, located in Orlando, Florida. He is a renowned performance educator, speaker, and multi-sport performance expert. TA coaches and mentors the youth and educates other teachers and trainers. He has trained Super Bowl champions, Heisman Trophy winners, NBA All-Stars and Hall of Famers, MLB All-Stars, Gold Glovers, World Series champions, and Hall of Famers, world number one golfers and major champions on the PGA and LPGA tours. Guys, the list goes on and on and on. TA is an amazing individual, and I'm super blessed to have him on the show today, and I think you guys are going to get a whole lot out of him. Before we get to the show, please, if you are listening to this show, you know the deal. Please share it out to your friends, your social medias. Tag me and TA in the stories, and I'll definitely share it back with my audience as well. Anything that you guys can do to continue to spread the word of the Determined Society and the mission that we have going on here, it's greatly appreciated. So without further ado, TA, welcome to the show, brother.
Hey, thanks so much for having me, Sean. It's a blessing and an honor to be here. And listen, man, I love when I see somebody that has the same kind of energy that I gravitate towards. And ever since I've met you and known you through some mutual friends, I've seen and felt that energy in every single post, every single thing that you do, man. So, I love following people who have that positive energy, man. So let's get to it.
That means a lot to me, brother. It truly does. And I can say the same for you. The thing that I love most about you is not only just what you're posting about and the things that you're doing in Orlando, with your center. I can feel the passion from you. I can feel the love in everything that you do. And I think the world needs it. Society needs it, especially here in America right now.
No doubt.
But it's, and we have some mutual friends too from back in the day.
Man, we do.
We do.
Indeed.
Our boy JD, I talked to him the other day. He said you were the man that he's like, hey man, tell him I love him. So
yeah, man. Yeah. I love Jeff Dillman. He's a good friend and an amazing person, first and foremost, an unbelievable coach, and somebody who's inspired me through the years as well. So I'm glad when I found out that you knew him, it all made sense. Made sense, Sean. So here we are.
I can tell you, being in the weight room with him back in the day in 2002 and 2003 at LSU, it was a scary situation. And dude, that staff was loaded. We had, Tommy Moffitt, who's a legend, obviously. Right. We had Scotty Cochran, right? Mm-hmm. Screaming, yeah, way back in the day.
Yeah.
And it turned into a thing. Right. We had Dillman.
Right, yeah, Vic Valoria.
Vic, yeah, man. I mean, bro, it is. Yeah. That staff was lit.
That's just from the strength staff. And then you had Jimbo Fisher, you had Muschamp. You had all these amazing coaches and coordinators from all in one place. And then obviously Coach Saban, who was the head football coach. So not just baseball, which is what you played, but football, like all of the sports across the board were just loaded, man. From the coaches to the players to the staff to the strength staff. It was amazing.
Yeah, Saban was a coach when I was there, and he had all those dudes. It was just, if you look back at it, it's just, It's nuts to see like how many amazing professionals were on that football field, you know, and it was a special time in my life. But yeah, man, Jeff Tillman's great dude. So listen, man, let me ask you a quick question. I like to have a little fun first, right? Before we get into nitty gritty. But hey, man, what is one thing that people may not know about you that's so special that you want to talk about?
I'm a nerd. I'm a nerd, man.
Explain.
Yeah. No, I just I love learning about learning. Right. I love learning I think one of the best ways, one of the processes, the most, deliberate processes of learning is teaching. Right. So my entire life, not only am I forever a student, but I always had this like burning desire to teach. And what I didn't realize at the time was that it's because I had some good teachers, along the way that inspired me to be a teacher. I ended up teaching school for 3 years. I taught middle school. Everybody always says, God bless you.
Dude, middle school's crazy, man.
It's crazy. But the interesting thing about those kids is that they're old enough to understand what you're saying, but they're young enough to still be not too set in their ways where they're impressionable, where you can really make an impact. And so I love teaching middle school, but what you realize is that by teaching, you actually are reinforcing the learning that you're doing. So for me, having that constant like teacher-student mentality, like that cyclical process for me has been something that has driven me, and it's never let me settle and be comfortable, not only with my own clients, but with myself. So I'm a nerd. I like biomechanics. I like science. I like neuroscience. I like understanding the why, the real reason. When I learned how to drive a stick shift many years ago, I had one friend that just said, hey, this foot goes up and this foot goes down, and then you move the stick. And that didn't make sense to me. As soon as I understood what was happening in the engine, then it made sense for me. Immediately I could drive a stick. So I'm the guy who I go from like kind of parts to the whole. A lot of people go from the whole and break it down to the parts. Yeah. But if I understand the parts, it's easier for me to concoct the whole. So I love just nerding out on stuff. I'm not a voracious reader, if you will, but I will read things that are like, if I think about an idea or I want to know more about that, I'll dig into it deep, and I'll go after it. And so I'm constantly trying to just be the person that's on not just the cutting edge to do something different, but sometimes I like bringing and digging back. What were they doing 50 years ago that was so successful that's still around today? I want to know those things just as much as the new stuff too. So I think books have been around for years and years and years. And, it's so digital these days that we kind of don't turn the pages anymore. I love picking up something and turning the pages and just getting smarter and better at what I do.
There's something to be said about just turning the page, because like you can write notes in the margin, you can always go back to it, and you are actively engaged in the reading process when you're doing that. Whereas digital, too many things can go on. If you're on a digital iPad, you're on your iPad, you're flipping through, and then if it's connected to your iMessage, Sean French texts you like, TA, what's up? And then like all of a sudden you're off, right? You're not on there reading anymore.
Yes, exactly.
But, it's funny because you brought this up, and I love the fact that you brought up the fact that, being a nerd or, you always love teaching because it reinforces the learning that you're doing. You and I had an interesting conversation on the phone about a week ago, and it was really impactful for me because you spoke about a situation to where you weren't always such a great ball handler. Right. And you went into a story to where you were doing some instruction and you were tasked to give that. Can you tell the listeners a little bit about that story? Because I think there's some serious power in that, because I think all too often we sit there, if we don't know something, who am I to teach it? And they go through this imposter syndrome. It really just kind of, tweaks the mind a little bit. So I love what you did with the mindset shift there. So please talk about that.
Sure. So I used to, starting in 2000, I had the opportunity to work with Vince Carter, legendary NBA star. And if, people didn't know Vince Carter, just all you have to do is turn on YouTube and type his name in, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. But Vince and I are the same age. Oh, just jump completely out of the gym, and just a freak athlete and just a great player, cerebral player. And just had a long, wonderful, he played in 4 different decades. Not very many people have done that, anything for 4 decades. And he played basketball in 4 different decades. But Vince Carter was somebody I had an opportunity back in 2000 to help assist with his basketball camps. He was a young player in the NBA, and he was just starting his basketball camps. And I got kind of accepted by the Daytona Beach mainland family to come in and kind of be one of the coaches that helped assist. Well, a couple of years in a row, I was able to just be there as a coach. I ultimately would go on to be able to be the floor director and run Vince Carter's basketball camps at wherever he was in New Jersey or Toronto or Daytona Beach or wherever we were. Anyway, before I became into the position of running those camps, I would be given a certain task at the camps. We'd have 20 different coaches and everybody teaching. You're teaching shooting, you're teaching defense, you're teaching, ball handling, you're teaching this, you're teaching that. And, Coach Charles Brinkerhoff, who was a mentor of mine to this day, who was Vince's high school coach and ran all the camps. And he said, TA, I would love for you to do ball handling this week. And anybody that knows me said, they know I might've been able to jump out of the gym, but, nobody ever said, wow, he has these amazing ball handling skills. And, it made me nervous. It made me nervous to be conducting something, not feeling like I was a good ball handler. And he said, don't worry about it. Just focus on the fundamentals and the basics. I said, cool, I'll do that. So, I just trusted Coach Brink and his process. And he said, just stick with what you know. I said, all right, cool. So I started teaching the kids what I know. I started by patting the ball, then doing figure eights through my legs, and then going around my head, around my chest, around my waist. And then before you knew it, by Wednesday of the week, the camp was Monday through Friday. By Wednesday, man, I was going left. I was going right. I was crossing over quick. I was like, man, because we would play basketball at the end of every day, with all the, all the NBA guys and the camp guys. And man, next thing you know, my ball handling was improving dramatically in just a couple of days. And I just realized it. And it wasn't just a basketball moment for me. It was such a teachable moment. Like, man, anything that you lean into, anything that you look at, you say, man, I am not very good at this, or I can afford to be better at this. Just spend some dedicated time leaning into it and take the most simple, fundamentally ridiculous aspects of it and just pound them. And next thing you know, you have a much higher competency, whether it's a physical competency, mental competency, or what have you. You have a better ability at the end of a very short period of time, and you actually start to increase. And the fact that you haven't been focused on it and then you spent some particular focus on it means whether it's neurologically or what have you, you're going to have that immediate pop, that immediate increase. And so I started using that same idea with other aspects of my life. Maybe it was writing, or maybe it was reading, or maybe it was other different activities that I was doing. And I used that same dedicated focus on the fundamentals for a short period of time. And I had dramatic results across the board. So, thank you for asking me about that story. Because to me, I didn't realize how impactful it was when we had the conversation. But, for me, that's a big deal.
If we could do that on a day-to-day basis, right? Just lean into it. And I want to get to the leaning into the thing, but like having the ability or the courage to just lean into something like that and practice it and be vulnerable enough to like, feel like, okay, I don't know everything, but I'm going to do this, I'm going to apply this information. I'm going to go step by step. Right. Because at that point we can grow. And all too often right now is when people get, that's out of my comfort zone, I'm going to run from it. Right. It's like that growth just scares people. And, I think at one point in life, we all go through those moments, but it's super important. Just like when you're working out, your goal is to put your body under so much stress that it goes into failure the last 2 to 3 reps. It's uncomfortable, but there's growth. Right. And to your point, when you lean into something like that, you are telling yourself that you are going to move forward in attacking something that you don't feel very comfortable doing. And when you're able to do that, your threshold goes a little bit higher. Right. So now you try things like,
no doubt about it.
I'm still not going to skydive. Don't get me wrong. Like, I'm not going to do anything crazy like that. I'm not jumping out of a perfectly good airplane, but like, you feel like you can start taking on more risks and more things because you're like, well, if I did that, then I can do that. Have you noticed? Well, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, it's ironic you talk about skydiving because I have a 21-year-old son, and last Friday, it was one of his things where he said, man, I'm not afraid of very many things, but that makes me afraid. I'm going to go do it. And he jumped out of a plane from like 13 or 14,000 feet. I'm like, I couldn't believe he did it. And now the ironic thing about it is, and he's a football player, college football player, plays defensive back at Columbia. And he's already not afraid of anything, but he jumped out of this plane. He said right before he got out of there, he watched people jumping out like, oh my gosh, what have I got myself into?
Mm-hmm.
But as soon as he got into the air, after about 5-10 seconds, it was like, I've conquered it, and then now he wants to go back next week and go to the highest. He wants to go up 6,000 or 7,000 feet higher and do it again. So a lot of things are on the other side of that fear, that nervousness.
Mm-hmm.
But the best part about it is it actually is like a master key that unlocks, the next opportunity or the next big nugget or the next big hurdle for you. We have you think you have this systematic approach of how you're going to conquer and accomplish everything, but you just got to do it scared. You got to get uncomfortable and you got to do things that make you nervous that maybe are outside of your character even, and get it done. And so to your point, I'm not going to jump out of one either, but my obstacles and my hurdles are different ones. There's different things that I jump out of, that help get me to the next level.
I think it's important too, because what your son did at that very, very moment, and, maybe he realizes it, maybe the listeners don't realize it, or maybe your son doesn't, is the fact that he's going to have a better season because of that.
There's no doubt.
I mean, like,
no doubt.
There's no fear. If he literally conquered his only fear, then there's nothing left to fear. Right?
Yes. So
it's
true.
Super cool.
So
man.
true.
That's super cool. Man, I love hearing stories like that. You have another kid that's a really good athlete too. Baseball player, right?
Yeah. My 12-year-old, he's playing his all-star season right now. They won the districts, one of the hardest districts in Florida. They won that. And this weekend they're playing for the sectionals. They get through that sectionals. Next week they're playing for state. And then after that it's regionals. And, they really have the team that has a really good shot to get to the Little League World Series, which was always a dream of mine. I know you as a baseball player probably had the same dream as I had. We watch it on TV. And I mean, every day he's watching YouTube. He's watching every game of the Little League World Series he can find. He's putting himself in a position, in a mindset right now. And he's thinking, here's how I would hit off of this guy if I was facing him. And here's what I would do. I would have fielded that ball differently in center field than that gentleman did when he went to field that ball. So it's, what I love about it, without him realizing, he's immersing himself in the mindset to be successful when he gets there. So when he sees it, the lights aren't going to be too bright and the stage is not going to be too big, because he experiences it every single day. So he's already set the stage for himself. Now they got to do their job between then and now, and hopefully they get there. So it's an exciting path.
Those are the young athletes that turn into be phenomenal and great athletes, because that gift right there, or the discipline, because I think it's a discipline, right? To sit down and watch YouTube and actually study games is few and far between at that age, man. I mean, there's Division I baseball athletes and football athletes that aren't doing that consistently enough. So, there's no question, you and your wife have led to a point where, they have seen your habits. And I always say this, your children are going to see you, and they're going to follow you wherever you go. You just better hope you don't lead them into hell.
Right. No doubt about that.
This is an awesome conversation, by the way. And the cool thing is, guys, role modeling is a huge thing in the household, and that is something that you and your wife created. I mean, you guys have an amazing business, and what you guys do, making people better every single day in your community. Yes. Please tell the listeners, I have a lot of local listeners that would probably love this information. Come check you out.
Well, yeah. So better every day is the whole idea is the relentless pursuit for excellence. What we're trying to achieve. We know we can't get it all today. I got this from my dad. My dad passed away in 2009 from cancer. Yes, cancer does suck. But what he left me was so substantial. A few nuggets of information, statements, and principles that I really live by. And one of them was better every day. And I remember as being 10 years old and me being 10 years old and being in the backyard with my dad and wanting to put more weight on the cement, weights that are, resting in the backyard. And he said, listen, son, you don't have to lift the whole world to get better. You just need to get a little bit better every day. He said, if it's light, move it fast. I'll never forget that. And, he was a very, very fit guy, 6'2", 200 pounds, fit, ripped, even, to the last days. And, he said, you don't have to do it all today. You just have to get a little better every day, and you have to relentlessly pursue excellence. And so that's the type of mentality that we try to get across, not just to our athletes who are professionals, but we have a whole lot of general everyday folks that come because they want a higher level of health and wellness, whether it's mental health and wellness, physical, obviously, but also emotional, spiritual. We have our pastors train with us. We have a great environment, a great family environment where everybody gets better, and have a new project that we're building a new facility. We're working with a baseball facility right now, which you would love to have a look at. It's called TNXL, and we're sharing space with them for the moment as we're building our new one, which is 8,000 square foot space, which is pretty amazing. So we're going to have the opportunity to continue to affect our community positively. I work with Under Armour. I've been with Under Armour since 2009. And not only do I work with Under Armour by just wearing the clothes and being a quote unquote ambassador, but I'm on the field for doing all the on-field performance for the Under Armour All-America football, some of the other ones. And then Amber and I, my wife, we have the Under Armour Under the Lights Flag Football League, where we have thousands of kids, throughout the course of a year that, we have them playing from kindergarten to 8th grade, playing a very high level of flag football, where there's no just participation trophy. Like, it's competitive. You get a trophy if you win, you get a medal if you win. But what we're doing is we're working with Under Armour in the community, not just from the apparel perspective, but doing events at the Boys and Girls Club, doing events at the Brand House for Mother's Day, things of that nature. And we're trying our best to make sure we're visible in our community, not just with what we wear, but with the actions that we take. So not only is that an extension of our gym, what we have going on at Better Every Day, but we're called to serve, So we want to make sure that we're doing our part to maintain that service-based mindset in our own community, and just help share some of that love, because we can't keep it all for ourselves. We might as well share it,
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I just want to acknowledge you before I go any further. Just saying that, I've talked to a lot of successful people on this show, and I love where your mind's at. I love the things that you're doing.
Appreciate it.
It's one thing to be an ambassador for Under Armour and work with Under Armour, and, but the fact that you guys are actually out there in the community partnering with Under Armour, hand in hand, and providing such a safe and competitive environment for the youth.
Yes.
There's not enough of that. And having that mission with such a big brand is huge, man. What are some of the things that you've learned most along that journey in providing the community with things like this?
Well, I think one of the things that you learn the most is that the community is hungry for it, and it's almost like, if not me, then who? So on the opposite side of that imposter syndrome that we all, even the high performers and successful people tend to have, like, who am I, to teach this, or who am I to lead that, you start to realize that there are opportunities in our community that people are hungry for, that no one's taken the initiative to just bring together. So what I found to answer your question indirectly is that there are things in our community that are necessary, that are needed, that people really need if they're going to be able to reach their own goals, but they don't have a systematic approach, or they don't have a process, or they don't have a roadmap to get there. Being able to have leagues like this, not only does it create an athletic outlet and activity-based outlet for young people, but it also brings parents together in a very positive environment, because, the state of youth sports right now is getting a little bit crazy. It's getting more and more competitive all the time. It's like, with the travel ball and all this, and even youth football, tackle football, these kids are already playing tournaments, tackle tournaments and stuff like that. I'm not here to bash that. I'm just saying that the expectations of young athletes, and the ratings and the rankings and the stars and all this, it's like, there are not very many safe places for them to go where they can just go have fun with their friends. Yeah. And that's what our league provides. It provides the opportunity to do that. And some of the other activities that we do, we want to take the pressure off. We want them to be able to just go, really, like, you remember what it's like growing up, and, I would, and growing up in Sarasota, I could get a bucket of balls with my friend and jump the fence at Little League and play home run derby. Or we would go to the football field or play football in the street, and, like, there was no scoreboard, no referee, no stars, no ratings, no rankings, and we played. And I think the organic, like, athleticism and creativity and all that stuff that comes out in those environments are the key. So we're trying to provide a structured aspect of that, a structured aspect of play, where yes, we do want to win, but because there's lessons in losing, just like there's lessons in winning. But if nobody wins and nobody loses, then we miss all those opportunities. So we're just trying to provide a platform for people to do that. And it seems like for right now, the biggest benefit that we found from it is not financial. It's not even getting people to come to the gym. It's that, thank you so much, Amber. Thank you so much, Trevor, for providing this outlet, because otherwise our kids wouldn't have this positive environment. We play all these leagues, we do all these tournaments, but this is where we love playing the most. This is what they get eager and excited for, is coming to play in your league. So that means the most to us.
I think it's super important. I'm not here to bash youth sports, although I may have a few months ago. I don't take back what I said, because here's the thing. I just feel like there is way too much pressure on these young kids right now to perform at such a high level. And they are tying their self-worth to their performance. They're human beings, not human doings. Okay. I had a very good guest on my show, Seth Pepper. I think you know him. We had a conversation probably about 2-3 months ago, and, it's gotten out of control, and it's getting to a point where, parents, their kids are 8 years old and their kids are playing 64 baseball games in a summer. And it's like, guys, what are we doing?
Crazy.
And then the atmosphere at these games, it's like parents are trying to fight umpires, coaches. I don't know if you saw this. This is really interesting to me. And it came out at the time that I released that podcast in a couple reels on youth sports. There was a coach that did not agree with a call in I think it was a 10U game, baseball game.
Yeah.
He literally took the umpire's face and shoved him to the ground.
Wow.
It's like, what are we doing? What are we teaching our children?
It just doesn't even surprise me, because I've seen so much craziness. And but here's what I think, though, Sean. I think that look, I can't control these parents. I can't control the umpire. There's umpires out there. They're out there for their own glory as well. So don't make no mistake. So I can't control them. But what I can do is I can have the conversations in my house with my son, right? And manage my own environment the best way possible and say, listen, son, I know, like it's almost like a meteoric rise this kid's having with baseball. And he's going like this. And now after this All-Stars is over with, I'm shutting that down. And it's football time.
Good for you.
We're not going to throw every day, and we're not going to hit every day. You're 12. You're going to be fine. I remember when I was 12, as soon as the season was over, guess what? It was football time. And so we can't go along to get along. You know what I mean? We can't be out there doing exactly what the industry said. I get an email every single day from Perfect Game. Watch out. It's almost too late for you to sign up for this tournament, bro. I mean, like at some point, we have to be able to, it's the early specialization that's getting kids hurt. It's getting them burnt out. And I don't need to get into the science of all that. It's just really a lot more common sense than science. But having a comprehensive movement, foundation that is a multi-sport movement-based foundation, I think it doesn't hurt anybody for any sport to have that multi-sport. You're not going to miss out. If you take a few months off of throwing, you're going to be fine, especially at 12. My goal is to make sure that we create, and especially through our gym environment, whatnot, that we create a comprehensive, like movement-based athlete that has a high level of physical literacy so that they can compete in whatever activity they do, right? Because we don't climb trees and dig holes in the woods and jump them with our bikes and stuff like that like we used to. But that doesn't mean that we can't expose them to a multi, faceted movement-based, protocol with the activities that we put them in. And it's okay if they don't want to do those things, right? They still got to do it because we're the parents.
Yeah.
So I don't want to just be subject. I don't want to be subject to the monster of youth sports, and keep everything, kind of as many variables as possible. At some point, you're going to have to specialize. I realize that. But right now, when they're in that age, when their bodies are just trying to develop everything, it almost is a disservice in most cases to keep them on a one track, because they're going to miss out on the other aspects that can make that one track, as good as it could possibly be.
It's funny you say that.
I don't preach to the choir. I want
to say that because I'm glad you're saying this because, it hurt me. By the time I got to LSU, I wasn't athletic enough. I wasn't strong enough. I wasn't dynamic enough. And then bad mindset, victim mentality, all drove me down a road that I didn't want to go down. And I never turned out to be that high level performer at my dream school. And, I won't say all of it is because I specialized too soon, but man, I'm going to tell you, a lot of it was, I wasn't strong enough. I didn't have enough tools in the belt, and what I found is, you can hide it in junior college.
Oh yeah.
But once you get to the SEC, bro, you can't hide that, man.
No,
you got a catcher that you're competing against for some playing time, and he was an All-American in baseball and All-State in football. That dude's tough. It's tough to beat. Yeah. One of the things I want to touch on, I want to take the opportunity because you and I also had another amazing conversation in the same conversation we had. We touched on stories with the youth, and what you said about, sitting your son down and having a conversation with him really triggered that story about, the generation like us preparing our youth to lead from the front right now. And we talked a little bit about the Indian culture, the American Indian culture. And I want you to touch on that for the listeners, because I think it was a very interesting perspective, and quite honestly, it blew me away. So, fire away, dog.
Yeah. So, I had the honor to listen to a Native American gentleman. He's about 40 years old, from Navajo tribe. And, everybody knows about COVID, and COVID happened and all that type of stuff. But if you understand the Native American culture, the way that they continue to survive generation after generation after generation is their culture is to tell stories, right? Whether it's to gather around a campfire or a dinner table or what have you. And they have, the grandfather and the great-grandfather and maybe the great-great-grandfather, and they continue to tell these stories. And the culture is to get together, tell stories, break bread. And I guess it never occurred to me, but hearing the story a couple months ago, the biggest challenge that the Native American were having on the reservation was that what COVID was doing was it was hitting those communities harder than any community in the country. And all of the elders, the majority of the elders are starting to die and starting to succumb from this terrible disease, right? And not only was the physical person dying, but the stories that they tell around that campfire were also dying with them. And what happens is middle age, whether you call 40s middle age, 40s and 50-year-olds, they weren't the ones that had to lead from the front in the storytelling, because they always had their parents and their grandparents. And, you had your 70 and 80 and 90-year-olds still telling those stories. But who is going to tell the stories when the elders begin to unexpectedly die off? And now you're the oldest member of the family now. And now you're the one sitting in the driver's seat to tell all the stories, right? I think the biggest challenge that we're having in America right now and beyond is that we're sitting back and waiting to be the storyteller. We have significant experiences in our life to this point. I'm 45 years old. And man, I was just thinking about it the other day, like, man, I've seen some things. I've been through some things. I've struggled through some things. I've had some successes. Like, there are things, the reason why we're having this conversation right now is because we have stories to share. We have lessons to share. We have moments to share, successes and failures to share. But we can't wait until we're 70 or 80 years old to start sharing them, right? I think if anything that I learned through that conversation, just listening to the passion of this gentleman speak, was it's an indication that right now is the time. Right now is the time to share information. God did not bless us with this information and these experiences just so that we can keep it to ourselves, right? These experiences have got to not only help ourselves, but help the next generation. And we need to start telling those stories now. As a matter of fact, there's stories that we've learned because of how society has changed that we can share with our parents if we're fortunate enough to still have one or both of our parents around, or even share with our grandparents because they don't understand what's happening in society today. The same way that our kids were learning. I learned a lot from my 12-year-old. I learned a lot from my 21-year-old. And being able to sit in that driver's seat and say, okay, buckle up. It's time to tell this story. Because listen, at some point or another, we're not going to be around to tell that story anymore. And if we take it to the ground with us, then that's an opportunity lost for everybody around us that we care about.
That's a really great point. And again, I mean, there's so many great nuggets in that story. The big one is if we take things to the ground with us, like you said, we don't just take the stories, we take the culture with us.
Exactly right.
And that's the thing. Like, we don't want the culture to die. And it's so funny because like when the first thing I thought when we got off the phone that day and you're talking about that story about the gentleman from the Navajo tribe that you spoke to, I was like, man, that's really, it's a really good point. Native Americans, they tell some great stories, and it's really unfortunate that the elders are passing away from, whether it's COVID or whatever it is. It's really upsetting because that culture is going to suffer for generations if the younger generation is not prepared and ready to tell the stories right now.
Right.
And it reminded me of some of the most enjoyable times of my childhood was sitting at my great grandparents' place for family reunions every Labor Day in Clear Lake, California. We'd all go there. Excuse me. Their home was located right on a creek. At nighttime, all the adults would sit around, in chairs, and they would have their beers and listen to Randy Travis on the great boom box. He was the man back there, right? We were jamming Randy. We were playing croquet, badminton. And the one thing that I always remember is wanting to be sitting in that circle at night with a fire, listening to stories. And even in my family now, my home, we tell stories. We talk at the dinner table every night. TV's off, no electronics. We do, we do what we're grateful for. Every person goes around, tells what the three things that we're grateful for.
Amazing.
Three things that we could have done better today that we failed at, right? I got my 3-year-old doing it. My wife's incredible, by the way. That's not all me. My wife is just fixated on making sure that our children have enough tools to get through adversity and to be able to properly handle successes. And
that's awesome.
That's not going on right now in society. We're not, as a whole, we're not having these conversations at dinner. You go to a restaurant. All right, go to a restaurant with your beautiful wife and your 2 handsome boys, and you're sitting down, and you look around. If they aren't on their own tablet, they're on the tablet that's provided to them at the restaurant, and they're playing games.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And that's the thing that I loved about that story, because that is a true way to connect, is through telling stories. I think you learn a lot about people that way. Hell, I've learned a lot about you, just that one conversation. You told me 2 stories.
Awesome. Yeah.
So
yeah, it's one of those things where, you start to realize it. And I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it's just the age that I'm at right now. And I was just thinking, man, like, I'm watching my son practice at 12 years old. And I remember being 12 on the field in All-Stars. And I remember every single player. I remember what we were doing. I remember the specific practices. I mean, and I don't have a bunch of video because there wasn't social media. I have a few pictures and stuff like that. But it's like, man, I remember it vividly. And man, that was 35 years ago. You know what I'm saying? Almost 35 years. So it's like, man, like this thing happens fast.
Dude, so quick.
So if not now, then when? If not now, when? I'm not sitting up here and trying to tell this entire podcast that I'm Mr. Go Get It, like every single time, every mission. Like, come on, man. We all battle that, right? If we don't set up ourselves with a systematic approach to kind of attack these things, we won't. But we're not always going to feel like, we're not going to always love it every single day. We're not always going to want to get up and attack our process every single day, but we know it's required. If we can, as non-negotiable as we can make it, we have to. But sometimes we do fall short. We do. And the Bible says we all fall short of the glory of God, right? So we're all going to fall short in one way, shape, or form. But what do you do next? What do you do next? And if you know that storytelling is something that's going to help your family, then, or your society or your community, look, you have a decision. You have an opportunity right now. Let's start telling those stories authentically. Yeah. That's been the shift in my career. I mean, I've been coaching for a long time. Over 27 years, I've been coaching, athletes. But now it's, and I've done my own sports as a professional athlete. But now it's like, okay, it's not enough just to be coaching 1 or 2 or a group of people. Now it's time to start telling these authentic stories and sharing these opportunities for success, and also sharing your failures. so that other people can learn from your mistakes, not just you.
Yeah, exactly. And you mentioned a very important phrase that a mutual contact of ours talks about all the time, Ben Newman, attacking the process and, process over feelings. And, that's a certain mindset that a lot of times, I catch a lot of flack for, and I'm sure, but most people don't understand what it really means. Doesn't mean we're perfect. It just means that we know that if there's something to be done and it's a part of our daily process, to not let our feelings get in the way of that work getting done. Because when that happens, we negotiate with ourselves, then we start to let our dreams go.
There's no doubt.
We decay. And then our children see that. Right. So I think it's super important. That mindset right there, is something that I think it's invaluable. To do.
Just the process over feelings. I mean, it has to be, and that's something I really learned from Ben, spending my time that I've been spending with Ben, especially over the last several months. You have to be able to have that process in place. I mean, you can say process over feelings, but if you don't have a process, then what are you putting in front of your feelings? It's about doing the unrequired work Ben talks about. There's a workout that you're going to do 3 days a week or whatever, but then there's unrequired work. That is like brushing your teeth every day. And I always say it like this, it's like brushing your teeth, right? Brushing your teeth, you don't brush your teeth to make your teeth better. You're really actually brushing them so that they don't get worse, right? So we don't want our teeth to get worse. Right. That's why we're brushing them, right? So it's not like every time I brush, I put another layer of beautiful enamel over the top and it's just going to just continue to, it's so that they don't get worse. And we got to realize that. And there's something that Jeff Dillman, when Jeff Dillman was at South Carolina, he said, we went in there one day. I went in there with my son. When my son was on the recruiting process. And Dillman said, he said, ATA, you know what I tell him? I said, well, he said, I tell him, forget your feelings. Forget your feelings, because your feelings get you beat and me fired. And bottom line, I mean, and that's really what it's about. Like, your feelings can get in the way and they can interfere. You can play emotional without being in your feelings. There's a difference there. And I think that if you let your emotions guide it all, right? If you let your feelings guide it all, you're going to be playing catch up the whole time. But if you really play with a positive level of emotion that's integrated with the process, now you're creating success.
It's super important, man. Let me ask you a quick question. Have you ever tried the unrequired workout?
Oh yeah. Oh, I've done it. I did it with Ben 2 weeks ago.
Did you? Did you go to the boot camp?
Him there. I did. And nice. He came to Orlando. And he's like, TA, what's up? I'm going to be in town on Friday, 6 a.m. Meet me at the spot. I was like, I'm there. That's awesome. So, and I think what's also important too is that you get into somebody else's unrequired work once in a while. Mm-hmm. Because Ben wakes up and he's been doing this now for, like 1,100 straight days. Over 1,100 straight days. He's a machine. But you know what? I see what it does to his mindset. I see that it's like he has to have it. You know what I mean? I had a chance to train with him and his trainer, Jamie. And look, he's got to have it. It is non-negotiable. Sick, tired, it doesn't matter. Right. But what it does for his mindset is it sets him on a path of accomplishment. Like, we talk about stacking those wins, right? And stacking those, as building blocks and really standing on top of them to achieve the next goal. It's like making your bed in the morning. I've achieved something. That unrequired work, I'm done with it. I've achieved it. I've got my process. I've written my affirmations. I've done everything I need to do. Now I can attack the day. And if I get nothing else done today, I've already accomplished a lot.
Exactly.
So, full transparency again, got to be transparent if you want to get better. I am not perfect at that. I'm better now than I ever was, but I still have a long ways to go. And I aspire to be like people like yourself and like Ben Newman that have been able to achieve this unrequired work relentlessly for so long and so consistently. I also know that my best self is still out there, and the closer I get to dominating this process and already tapping into this unrequired work on a frequent basis, I know the closer I'm going to get to achieving my best self forward. So I'm still looking for that guy.
Dude, same here. I think every day that we're striving, like your dad said, better every day. If you get 1% better every single day, be a better person, better man, better husband, better father, better professional, better coach. I think it's all we're shooting for, right? And listen, I surely don't have it all figured out. There's things that I struggle with too. For instance, today, there's so many people telling you like, hey, if you don't rest your body, it doesn't grow. This and that. Lean muscle tissue doesn't repair. It grows and you rest. So this morning I was like, man, I've lifted for like 6-7 straight days. I was like, you know what? I'm going to take a day off from the gym today. Let me tell you how my morning was. Never again, bro. Never again. I mean, like, listen, I'll end up getting a workout in today, right? But my process is up at 4. I'm pulling up to the gym by 4:30 in the morning. And anytime I break away from that process, that anxiety starts. My coping mechanisms. I have less patience with my kids in the morning. They don't want to listen. Or I'm trying to get them out of the house to go to camp, right? All these different things happen when we break away from the process. So it's a mindset. And for sake of time, I could sit here and talk to you all day, dude, but I got a couple more things I want to go over and, then we can debrief. But, mindset, everybody talks about it. It's almost like this buzzword that everybody uses, but you have worked with some amazing professionals, women professional athletes, male professional athletes, World Series winners, Gold Glovers, Hall of Famers, All-Stars, NBA All-Stars, everything. What is the biggest difference in their mindset of somebody that has the ability but doesn't quite get there?
So I've mentioned this before, and I still, the more I think about this, the more true it is. So I think it's pretty obvious to know that the best players in the world are not satisfied with the successes that they've had, right? So they don't win a World Series, but oh, I'm cool now. I'm chilling. I think they all want more. And in a very positive way, they want more. All right. So I think that's pretty obvious. But what's not so obvious, and what I actually think is the secret ingredient to high performers, especially in the athletic world and beyond, is that they also give themselves credit for the small victories along the way. They don't hold themselves to a standard of perfect, because perfect is if you were able to achieve whatever is perfect, then where do you go from there? I think that the best players in the world through history have always kept that carrot out in front of them so that they can continue to chase and drive and strive after something. I remember Michael Jordan would say he'd never say he's the best because then he didn't feel like he had room to get better, right? There's a mentor of mine, amazing dude in the fitness and performance world named Chris Frankel. He used to work as the director of human performance with TRX, a company that I worked with for many years. And Chris Frankel used to say, and maybe he got it from somebody else, but I'll attribute it to him. He said, people always say you can't let good be the enemy of great. And that makes sense. You don't want to just settle. But, but even more important is you also can't let great be the enemy of good. And what a lot of people that achieve a certain threshold, right, they are getting very good at what they do, but they are holding them to such a standard that they get all the way close to it without fully achieving it. And they don't give themselves credit for how far they've come because they're letting great be the enemy of good. You can still be
guilty,
really, really, really good. We all are though, but we all are, right?
Yeah.
But as long as we recognize that, dude, and I used this example before, what if your goal is to get to the Masters, right? And you're a golfer and you want to get to the Masters. Well, or to win the Masters, let's just say. Well, you get to the Masters and you go and you finish T4, right? At the Masters. Now, I mean, has your whole career just been a disappointment now at this point? Because you didn't actually win and you lost by 2 strokes and you missed it by 2 strokes. There has to be value in taking the value out of what you have achieved to get to that point, because you're in the top 1% of 1% of the world of golfers, just being in that tournament in the first place. Yeah. And the fact that you got a top 5 in that, I mean, there has to be some ignition there that really excites you and gets you going and propels you and kind of springboards you into the next opportunity. But if you miss that because you say, man, winning was the only goal and I didn't achieve it and I'm a failure, I mean, we miss out. So you just can't let great be the enemy of good.
No, I appreciate that, man, because, I'm guilty. Like I said, I yelled guilty as charged. I mean, there's not enough times where I will, I sent you a picture yesterday of the studio. Get ready, man. I can show you a picture of this thing a year ago. And, a year ago, I was like, oh man, that thing's terrible. Right. And you just see this natural progression, and you're so busy trying to get to that next level of whatever it is that you're doing. And you don't enjoy the moment of, something like, wow, this is like a level up. Like, let's enjoy it. So I have a lot of work to do in that. And you know what?
Yeah,
when my wife Jacqueline listens to this episode, she goes, well, if you won't listen to me, maybe you listen to Trevor. Because she'll tell you, like, dude, do you ever enjoy any win? I was like, no, I enjoy it. But like, I want to go through the next wall now. So, so let's lay on the plane here a little bit. I want everybody here to know how they can find you, how they can work with you, and how they can best support you.
Right. So, first off, social media. I mean, social media is obviously where everybody's really connecting these days. And on Instagram and Twitter, TA2 claps, TA2 claps.
And I'll put that in the show notes too. I'll make sure all your handles are in there.
Right. But the reason why I want to mention that is because, it's my opportunity to connect every single day. It's part of my process. When I wake up, I put my Bible verse of the day up there. It's a foundation. It's an anchor for me as well. And then I try to make sure that I am not so business oriented as it relates to my social media. I do business on there, but listen, I'm a whole person, right? I've got kids. I've got a beautiful wife. I love to compete. I love to play golf. Like, there's all these different things, but I think people need to see real people so that they can dial in with what their process is. They want to see an example of a real person. So I just try my best to be that example, if at all possible. And, some of the things that I have coming up is that in August, what I've started doing is working with people like Ben Newman and seeing the stuff that you're doing and so forth is, I'm speaking more deliberately and more purposefully now, whereas, people would call me, ask me to do a keynote speech, and I'd be like, okay, and I just kind of show up and do my thing, and everybody loved it and all of that, through the years. And, I've educated at a high level for a long time across the world in different places for different organizations. But for me, it's time for me to do exactly what we talked about earlier, which is start telling those authentic stories, right? And because there are bullet points in those stories that can really, really be valuable, not only for individual people as they're on their own personal journey, but for organizations, right? Big organizations, small organizations, and not just gyms in the fitness world, major corporations. There are things that I have been able to have access to through a number of years, and people, high performers that I've had a chance to affiliate with and associate with that I've learned a lot from. When I go out on the golf course with players, some of my pros, I'll teach them things. Now, listen, I'm a 14 handicap. Nobody believes me when I hit the ball because they go, oh, no, come on, you're sandbagging me. But no, really, I mean, over the course of 18 holes, it all evens out to be, about a 14 handicap. But I'm able to help scratch golfers and PGA Tour players and some of the best players in the world because I'm sharing stories with from some of the greats and sharing opportunities and sharing different types of events and things that have happened over a course of time in my experiences. So I get a chance to take, it all evolves like exponentially, right? I get a chance to take the lessons that I've learned from PGA Tour winners and champions and Super Bowl champions and, World Series champions. I get a chance to take the information that I've learned from them and share with others, not just in a direct way, but in a little more indirect way. And I can apply that to people's situations. So as a performance coach, what I want to be able to do is I want to be able to share some of my failures, right? Be as transparent as possible, but also talk about how I was able to overcome those things and help other people overcome some of those same obstacles, not just through fitness, but also through organizing their schedules, their daily planning, and things like that to be able to be the best high performer that they can be. You don't always have to look for high performers, to listen to what they're saying every day. Sean, what I did one day was I said, man, I hear all these motivational speeches and talks, and I hear people listening to everybody else's voice like all the time. Like, why not listen to your own voice? Right. So I'm committed. And what I've been doing is I've started recording a series of motivational talks for like me talking to me. If I can go back and coach and guide myself, what would I say to me? Right. And I'm shooting a series of those. Right. So now not only am I listening to the right things, I'm listening to my own voice. And now I'm reinforcing my own voice in my own head, hearing my own voice and inspiring myself. And I want to be able to encourage other people to do the same. So, in the beginning of August 1st is when I'm going to launch it. I want to make sure that people know that I am available, not only for speeches and talks and keynotes and training and teaching and education, but also for that performance coaching that's helping organizations and individuals get better every day as well.
There's so much alignment here, bro. So much alignment. Is there anything I can do to support you in that? You got to let me know.
Absolutely.
We can talk about some stuff. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I got some stuff we can chat about offline, that I think we can have some synergy with. So,
awesome.
Dude,
awesome.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Obviously, anything you need from me to help you, you just ask me. I've learned a ton from you, and I'm hoping that I can continue to learn from you and do some amazing things with you. And yeah, guys, so you've heard it here best. I want you guys, if you're listening, to really dive into the show notes and find TA wherever he is on social media, connect with him, see how real of a person he is. I don't think I've talked to very many solid people like TA. So connect with him, see what he's got going, go check him out. If you're in the Orange County area, see what he's got going on, stop by and be a part of it. And with that being said, guys, thank you so much. Appreciate you guys listening. And again, share the show with your friends. If we said something that made you happy, we said something that made you mad, share it along. If we sucked, you don't have to, but I don't think we did. I think it was an amazing conversation. So TA, man, big thank you to you. And
my pleasure.
I cannot wait to see what you do.
Well, I'm honored to be here, and I appreciate everything that you're doing. Keep inspiring and keep helping people get better every day. And if you need to get fired up, just give yourself 2 claps, baby.
Boom, boom, 2 claps. You heard it. We'll drop the mic on that one. See you soon, guys.
All right, baby. Take care. 2 claps.
Take care.